I'm literally holding my phone up with a Pepto bottle, so that is life right now. Oh shoot, I want to take my hair out because I actually did it. I feel like with reading, it's about quality, not quantity, and unfortunately this month I feel like I didn't have either. I just got myself this like fluffy, big, warm kind of zip up thing, and I've been pretty much living in it. Like if I'm in my house, I'm wearing this. I love it so much. Although I did rate a couple books pretty high this month. So maybe I'm just feeling meh because the end of the month was so bad. Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer and welcome to Best Kept Plans. Today's video is going to be my reading wrap up for November 2023. If you're interested in seeing what books I read last month, please stick around. So I am filming in my bedroom today. It is getting dark so early and I needed some additional light. I usually film these videos with natural light only. So I'm filming in my room today so that I could use some additional light. So hopefully the video quality is a little bit better. But if it's not its usual crispness, I apologize. It's just because of the lighting. This video again is going to be my reading recap for November 2023. November was definitely a bit of a struggle for me reading wise. I did have a couple of high rated books, but I feel like overall the month left me wanting. Yeah, I had to DNF a few. So that was definitely more unique for me. I don't do that very often. Kicking it off with the first book that I read this month, that was A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. This was definitely a very anticipated release for me. I read the first two books in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series earlier this year. The Ballad of Never After was very good and it left off on such an insane cliffhanger that I couldn't wait to dive into this. I know that a lot of people were let down or a bit disappointed by this book. I will say I didn't dislike it. I enjoyed it. It was very adventure heavy. There wasn't a ton of our female main character and our villain that we all love to love together, and I think that's what was disappointing to people. And I wouldn't have minded seeing them interacting more throughout the story, but I enjoyed the bits that we did get of them together, and I did overall like the adventure aspect to the story. I do feel like the ending was a bit rushed. I wish the author would have taken a little bit more time with the ending and given us a little bit more after the main conflict was solved, but I did end up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was a short little novella, and that is This Winter by Alice Oseman. This is a part of the Heartstopper series. I love the Heartstopper series. This novella I didn't know existed, and I just randomly happened to see it at the store and picked it up. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was nice. I thought it was nice to read around this time, around the holiday time. Definitely dives into a little bit of heavier subject matter. Not my favorite of the little Heartstopper novellas, but I did enjoy it. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book is an ARC that I was fortunate enough to receive. I got this from Sourcebooks Casablanca, so thank you to them for sending this to me. And that is Mercy by Sara Cate. This is the 4th book, I believe, in the Salacious Players Club series. I've been reading the series in the last few months because I did receive these ARCs. Mercy is coming out on December 5th. So by the time this video posts, Mercy will be out. They are releasing this series with discrete covers, so that's why I received an ARC. I was certainly looking forward to reading this because I really enjoyed the 3rd book in the series. Each book is based off of an owner of the Salacious Players Club, which is a sex club. And in this one, we have the female owner of the Salacious Players Club. She's in her early 30s. I think we're actually the same age, and it is a reverse age gap. There were definitely aspects of this that I enjoyed. I don't love age gap. There wasn't as big of an age gap in this one as there was in the first book in the series. I feel like I enjoy reverse age gap more than when the male main character is older than our female main character. But really for me, I struggle with age gap romance when the younger character is very young. And I think he's 21 or 22 in this, which just doesn't sit right with me. So I didn't love that aspect of the book. I do wish that this would have gone a little bit deeper with our female main character's past history and how she was raised and how she's coming to terms with her sexuality. I think that there could have been more done from that perspective. We also dove into that topic similarly with our male main character, and again, I wish that would have been dealt with or discussed a little bit more throughout the story. I did give this 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't dislike it. I certainly thought it was an entertaining and fun quick read, but not my favorite of the series so far. In 2023, I had a goal of reading 1 book of poetry every month of the year. And for November, I decided to pick up The Truth About Magic by Atticus. I read a book of poetry from this poet earlier this year and really enjoyed it. So I was very excited to pick up another one of their poetry books. And this one did not disappoint. I really love this. I actually tabbed the heck out of it. There were so many poems in here that I really enjoyed and would like to read again. So I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars, would definitely recommend it, and can't wait to dive into more poetry by Atticus. Next, we have another ARC that I was fortunate enough to receive. Thank you so much to the Dial Press for this one, and that is Done and Dusted by Lyla Sage. This is a newer release. I was excited to read this because I had heard that it was good. This book did not disappoint. I loved this. Like, I enjoyed this so much more than I thought I was going to. I ate it up. I couldn't put it down, and I ended up reading it genuinely in like a day. It was just so good. And the second I put it down, I was wishing that another book in the series was already out. The second book in the series is actually coming out in March. It's called Swift and Saddled, and I would probably cry if I got an ARC of that book because I want to read it so bad. I did request it on NetGalley. It is still pending. I want to be in this world again so much, and I know that the next book involves one of our female main characters' brothers, and it's the brother that kind of intrigued me a bunch when I was reading this one. So I am very excited for that. But this book was fantastic. I highly recommend it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Really loved it and cannot wait to read more from Lyla Sage. The next book that we are going to talk about is probably became like my most anticipated release of the year after reading the first book in this series earlier this year. And that book is Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. I could not wait until this came out. I have not gone to a store at opening to run and grab a book since the Harry Potter series was coming out. And that's exactly what I did the day that this book was released. And I really wanted to take my time reading this, and I did. I'm glad that I took, I think, about 5 days to read this as opposed to probably being able to finish it in 2 days. And I tabbed the heck out of it. I had different color tabs for different things, but my tab that was for important information, I ran out of the color like 3 different times because I was tabbing so much stuff as important information. I know that a lot of people did not enjoy this book, and I haven't seen a ton of detailed criticism of it, but the things that I have seen, I can understand. I definitely think this book had less action than the first one. It's definitely a slower book for the majority of the book, but then has a very intense, very action-heavy ending. It definitely feels like a building book. Like, it felt like we took a lot of time developing the world, developing the story, developing the conflict. And I didn't mind that, but I can understand people not loving that. There's also definitely a situation where they bring a character back in this, and I definitely think that that was kind of a lower point in the story. But even with all of that said, I absolutely loved this, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. It was so good. And I'm very, very excited for the next book in the series. I do hope the author, Rebecca Yarros, takes a little bit more time with the next one and really goes through it and polishes it off. After reading Iron Flame, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to pick up, but I had this sitting in my TBR pile, and the cover was just so beautiful that it seemed like the right thing to pick up, and that is You Again by Cate Goldbeck. This is just such a gorgeous fall cover, and I knew I wanted to take the time to read it in November, and I'm very glad that I did. I think that I was a little worried about getting into a book slump after reading Iron Flame, and this book put that slump a little further off for me. I really enjoyed this. It's about two very flawed characters who have a really interesting dynamic with each other. It is a fall cover, but this is a winter book. And so I would say that you can read it in the fall, but you could also read this in the winter. You could read this right around the holidays, and I actually think it would be a perfect book to read right around the holidays. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I would definitely read more from this author, and ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. After reading You Again, I decided to pick up an arc that I was very, very excited about, and that is The Fury by Alex Michaelides. I love The Silent Patient. It is my favorite mystery thriller I've ever read, and while I didn't enjoy The Maidens as much, I'm always going to be intrigued to read what Alex Michaelides writes, and getting this arc was so exciting, and I was just so pumped to be able to pick it up. I love the cover of this. I love the evil eye. I wear an evil eye every day, and so that was immediately intriguing for me. I did really enjoy this story. The story was told in an interesting way. It has a narrator that is intending to tell a story that knows we, the reader, exists. They seem like a bit of an unreliable narrator as well, and it takes you through the story in a very interesting and enjoyable way. I don't think this was a perfect book. I did struggle with some aspects of it, but one thing that I was very happy about was that the ending didn't come out of nowhere, which was my biggest issue with The Maidens. It was such an easy book to read, but the ending seemed so out of left field that it didn't even make sense. This was not like that, which was really great. Overall, really enjoyed this. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. After reading The Fury, I decided to pick up my Instagram challenge book for November 2023. Oh wait, hang on a second. I forgot to mention that The Fury is my mystery thriller book that I read for my mystery thriller challenge for November 2023. Just like I'm reading one book of poetry every month, I'm reading a mystery thriller every month, and The Fury was that for me for November. So after reading The Fury, I decided to pick up my Instagram challenge book. I asked people to recommend me books on Instagram, and I read one of those books every single month throughout the year. And for the month of November, that book was How Not to Die Alone by Richard Roper. I was curious about this book. I was curious because of the title. I was curious because of the cover. And so I ended up picking it up, and unfortunately, I did not finish it. I think that this was about the time in the month where a book slump kind of caught up with me, and I think I just was a little bit less patient to read through books that were not immediately grabbing my attention. Like, I felt so slumpy that I think I was afraid to keep going and keep going and keep going. And so I did get 30% into this book. I did give it a try, and it wasn't that I wasn't enjoying it at all. It was just so defeating and depressing that I needed it to start picking up. And I think it probably was about to start picking up, but I needed to change gears. And so I ended up DNFing this. I could see myself coming back to this at some point. I just don't know when. So that was my first DNF of the month. And after that, I was incredibly nervous because I was trying to ward off a slump, and I didn't know what to do to ward off that slump. So I ended up going out and picking up a new release because I've read books by this author before. I've really loved books by this author before, and I know her stories kind of just dive right in, and I felt like that's what I needed. So I ended up picking up Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher, and I'm so glad that I did. This book sucks you in right away. I was immediately enjoying it. I don't know that I'd say I was immediately invested, but the story was entertaining enough right from the beginning that I wanted to keep reading. And I did eventually become more invested in these characters. I definitely liked that it was almost like a rivals to lovers, a childhood rivals to lovers kind of a story. I enjoyed that they had a past history. It didn't dive super deep into that past history. We didn't get a then and now storyline, but it was still really enjoyable. I liked that you could tell that these two characters were kind of mutually pining for each other, him especially, the male main character especially. And Lauren Asher, I just really like the way that she writes. I think she writes great romances, and I will continue to read her romances. This is going to be a new series, the Lakefront Billionaire series, and I'm definitely going to continue reading it. I ended up giving this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I picked up another ARC that I've received through NetGalley, and that is Afterworld by Debbie Urbanski. I was very excited to pick this up. The cover of this one was just very intriguing to me. I didn't know exactly what I was getting into with it, but I think what I was getting is not exactly what I thought I was getting. I ended up DNFing this book as well. I only got about 15% into it. I think part of the issue I had with this one was that I was reading it digitally. I was reading it on my Kindle, and I feel like the formatting of the Kindle version was so hard to follow. And I know that sounds weird, but this is kind of like dystopian, futuristic, sci-fi-esque book, and just the way that it was formatted was like very confusing to follow, and I feel like that was like taking away from the reading experience. And it definitely jumps back and forth, here, there, everywhere in time, which is okay, but I felt like it was doing it so much that I was having a hard time understanding what was going on. And we're kind of introduced to the idea of this artificial intelligence, which I believe is meant to be the kind of villainous character, but I don't know, the way that they're introduced is also very confusing. So I was just having a very hard time reading this, and because I'm still trying to ward off a slump, I decided that I needed to not continue with it. So I ended up DNFing that book. And then I picked up another ARC, and that ARC was Not Bad for a Girl by Anastasia Ryan. This book is coming out in January 2024. I was excited to get this. I saw this on Instagram. It sounded really good, and so receiving it in the mail was really exciting. And I will say that I appreciate what this book is about, right? I love a book with strong female characters. I love a book where we talk about feminism and where women are fighting for equality, and I enjoy all that stuff. I absolutely do. And I think Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis, which came out last year, is a wonderful example of how to do that in a really great way. Now, that is not a romance novel. That is a historical fiction. But every way that that book dealt with those topics, I felt was great. And I felt like, unfortunately, this book was an example of maybe what not to do when dealing with those topics. I felt like there was not any subtlety in this writing, and so it really kind of felt like the author was shoving these messages down the reader's throats, like smacking the reader over the head with the messaging. It didn't, and again, it's messaging that I enjoy, but it just wasn't being presented in a very enjoyable way. And I do feel like this is not a romance, even though it's being marketed as a romance. And the cover, which I have a picture of the cover right here, has a male and a female on it. To me, this is not a romance at all. This is a women's fiction story. This is a contemporary fiction story. We have our female main character who's struggling in the workplace and fighting for herself and fighting for equality, and a very subplot is romance. The romance in here does not have any bearings on the plot of the story. Like, the overarching plot of this story has nothing to do with the romance that's going on. So I think that this, unfortunately, was a miss for me, even though I like what the author was trying to say. So I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. And that is it for November 2023. Again, it was just a challenging reading month for me. I feel like it started off pretty strong, and then after I read Iron Flame, I got kind of lucky with the 2 reads that I picked up, and then everything just kind of fell apart. And I'm so thankful that I read Love Redesigned when I did, because I think it prevented me from falling off the reading wagon. I've read every single day of this year, and before I picked up Love Redesigned, I was very worried that I was going to enter into a scenario where I didn't even want to read. So I'm really glad that I picked that book up, and I'm really hoping that December turns out to be a better month for me. If you have read any of the books that I talked about in this video, please share your spoiler-free thoughts down below. I love chatting with people about books. And as always, everyone, please be safe. Bye-bye.